I'm Caroline West, 39 years old, and for most of my life, my younger sister Rachel has been my closest friend. I was there for her first day of school, her first broken heart, her first job interview. She used to say I was her second mom. But last summer, an invitation arrived in the mail that made me realize just how far apart we'd grown by the time I understood what was missing from that envelope. It was already too late to keep my daughter Lily from getting hurt. Before I go any further, let me know where you're listening from in the comments, and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever had to stand your ground when someone tried to push your family aside. I grew up in a quiet Denver neighborhood where the sidewalks cracked under winter snow and every backyard seemed to have a swing set or an old maple tree. My parents worked long hours, Dad as an accountant, Mom as a nurse, so I often ended up walking Rachel home from school before heading to my own middle school classes. I helped her with homework at the kitchen table, made peanut butter sandwiches, and listened to her stories about playground dramas. When she was 9, and some girls teased her about her red hair and freckles, I confronted them during recess, making sure they never bothered her again. She looked at me like I could fix anything. That bond carried us through the years. I helped her pick out her dress for her first dance, taught her how to put on mascara without clumping it, and waited up when she went on her first date. When she got into college, I was there cheering louder than anyone. When I married at 22, Rachel was my maid of honor, fussing over the flowers and making sure my veil stayed in place. She was by my side when Lily was born, the first person to hold her after the nurse placed her in my arms. For years, she was the fun aunt, the one who taught Lily how to bake cookies from scratch, took her for Saturday ice cream runs, and slipped her little surprises for no reason at all. Things began to shift 2 years ago when Rachel met Mark at a charity gala. He came from an old money family, worked in high finance, and lived in a world of private clubs and 5-star vacations. As their relationship deepened, Rachel's visits grew fewer. She traded casual coffee dates for weekends in Napa, and our long phone calls became quick text messages. Lily noticed too, asking why her aunt didn't come over anymore. I told her Rachel was busy, but the truth was harder to ignore. My sister was building a life that no longer seemed to have room for us. That June, the wedding invitation arrived on thick cream paper with gold script announcing the ceremony at one of the city's most exclusive hotels. Lily's face lit up when she saw the envelope already talking about what she might wear. It wasn't until later that night after she'd gone to bed that I realized only my name was printed on the card, not hers. At the bottom, in small print, it said, Caroline West and guest. My stomach tightened. The idea that Rachel would leave her own niece off the guest list felt unthinkable. I picked up the phone, telling myself there had to be some mistake, but deep down, I already knew this was the beginning of something neither of us could easily take back. When I called Rachel the next afternoon, she picked up on the third ring. Her voice sounded distracted, as if she was in the middle of something else. Caroline, I was just about to call you, she said. Did you get the invitation I told her I had, and that it was beautiful? Then I mentioned how excited Lily was, already thinking about what to wear. There was a pause, a soft exhale through the phone. About that, Rachel began Mark, and I decided to make the wedding adults only. No one under 18. I sat there gripping the phone. She's your niece, not some random child, I said, keeping my voice even. She's 15, Rachel. She's been to formal events before. You know she won't be a problem. Rachel sighed. It's not just about behavior. The venue is very upscale, and we'll have an open bar. Mark's family is very traditional, and they believe certain events just aren't for young people. They're paying for most of it, and they expect a certain level of sophistication. I tried to offer a compromise. What if Lily helped out? She could hand out programs or greet guests. She'd still be part of the day without taking away from anything else. But Rachel's tone shifted cooler now. "We've already hired staff for everything. It's all been planned for months. We can't make changes." I heard a muffled voice in the background, Mark's, followed by Rachel covering the phone. When she came back on the line, her voice was final. "This isn't up for discussion, Caroline. The invitation is for you and an adult guest. I hope you understand." Before I could answer, Mark's voice replaced hers. "Caroline, we've worked hard to make this the perfect day. It's going to be a sophisticated affair, and we can't make exceptions even for family. I'm sure you understand." His tone was polite enough, but carried a weight that made it clear the matter was settled. "I understand that it's your wedding," I replied, "but I don't understand why my daughter doesn't qualify as family on a day that's supposed to bring family together." There was a pause, then he said flatly, "That's your perspective. Ours is different. We hope you'll be there." The line went quiet as Rachel came back long enough to say she had to go. That night I sat at the kitchen table staring at the phone. I thought about how to tell Lily without making her feel unwanted. The next morning she came into the kitchen buzzing with energy. "The hotel where Aunt Rachel's wedding is, it has chandeliers bigger than our living room," she said, scrolling through photos on her phone. I asked her to sit down. She looked at me, the smile fading. "What's wrong?" I explained gently that Rachel and Mark had decided the wedding would be for adults only, and that meant she wouldn't be able to attend. Lily's face fell, though she tried to smile. "It's okay, Mom. I guess it's their day." I asked if she was sure, and she nodded, though her eyes were shiny. Then she said something that made my stomach tighten. "Did I do something wrong? Is that why she doesn't want me there?" I told her no, it had nothing to do with her. She hesitated before admitting she had already bought a dress, the blue one from the mall. She'd saved her babysitting money and gone back for it without telling me. After she went to her room, I called Rachel again. This time she let it go to voicemail twice before answering. "I wanted to let you know," I said, "that Lily and I won't be coming to the wedding." There was a long pause. "Is this about the adults-only thing?" she asked. "We settled that." "You made a decision that excludes my daughter," I said, "and I can't support that." Her voice sharpened. "So you're punishing me because I won't make an exception. This is why we didn't want kids at the wedding. It always becomes drama." "This isn't about rules," I told her. "It's about recognizing your family. She's not just a kid, she's your niece. You used to bake cookies with her every Saturday. She loves you." Rachel's voice was clipped. "This is my wedding, Caroline. If you can't respect that, maybe it's better you don't come." "I agree," I said. "If my daughter isn't welcome, neither am I. I hope you have a beautiful day." I hung up before she could answer. The backlash started within the hour. My mother called, urging me to be the bigger person and go without Lily. "It's just one day," she said. "She'll have plenty of family events." My father was more blunt, telling me to stop being stubborn. An aunt texted to say I was selfish. A cousin suggested I was jealous. I kept my responses brief. This wasn't about me. It was about showing Lily that she mattered. That night, I passed by her room and heard quiet sobs. When I knocked, she wiped her eyes quickly. "I just don't get it," she said. "We used to be so close." I told her sometimes people change, and that wasn't her fault. She asked if I was really not going because of her. I said yes, if someone couldn't accept both of us, they didn't get either of us. She hugged me hard. The weeks leading up to the wedding were a blur of relatives calling to pressure me. I stayed firm. When the day finally came, the sky was bright and clear. Lily and I spent it together, starting with a movie, then lunch at her favorite restaurant, then a trip to the mall. For a few hours, the subject of the wedding never came up. During lunch, my phone buzzed with messages from people at the ceremony. My cousin sent a picture of Rachel in her gown. Another text said she kept looking for me. My mother wrote that it wasn't too late to come to the reception. I put the phone away. "Just updates from the wedding," I told Lily. She nodded. "I know today's hard for you too," she said quietly. I told her I was exactly where I wanted to be, spending the day with her. By the time we got home that evening, there were more missed calls and messages waiting. My mother called again, accusing me of ruining the most important day of Rachel's life. I told her this wasn't about pride, it was about family, not leaving family behind. In the days that followed, the family divide became more obvious. My father stayed quiet but leaned toward Rachel's side. My mother grew distant, sending pointed remarks about loyalty. But not everyone disapproved. My grandmother called to say she was proud of me, her voice soft but sure. A few cousins sent private messages, agreeing that the adults' only rule should never have applied to Lily. Rachel and Mark left for a 2-week honeymoon in Italy. Social media showed them in gondolas at vineyards, posing in designer clothes. Not a word about us not being there. Friends who had attended told me the wedding was lavish, but impersonal, more about Mark's family than ours. One mentioned overhearing his mother call my parents quaint and say she was surprised Rachel had turned out so well given her background. 2 months later, I learned from my mother that Rachel and Mark had bought a new house in a gated neighborhood. She said there would be a housewarming party, 50 guests very exclusive, and that I was invited. "Will Lily be welcome?" I asked. My mother hesitated before admitting it would be an evening cocktail event, not really appropriate for someone her age. I told her we'd have to decline. It was clear this was the start of a pattern. As the year moved on, family gatherings became strained. By the time December arrived, I found myself wondering if we'd even see my parents for Christmas, or if this would be the first year Lily and I spent it alone. December came with a light dusting of snow across the front yard, the kind that clung to the grass but melted quickly from the sidewalk. Most years the start of the month meant pulling the ornament boxes down from the attic and letting Lily choose which ones would go on the tree first. This year, I hesitated before even opening the ladder. The tension with Rachel still lingered, and I wasn't sure how the holidays would play out. One Sunday afternoon, my mother called while I was folding laundry. Her voice carried an unfamiliar caution. "Your father and I are hosting Christmas Eve as always," she said. "We'd like you and Lily to be there." I asked immediately if Rachel and Mark would be attending. "Yes," she admitted. "They've confirmed." Then came the request I half expected. "Caroline, I really need you to make an effort this time. It's Christmas. I told her I was willing to be civil, but needed to know Lily would be treated with respect." "Of course she will," my mother said quickly. But when I pressed about whether Rachel and Mark would acknowledge what happened, her tone shifted. "You're asking too much. Rachel doesn't feel she did anything wrong." I didn't answer right away, hearing the faint clink of dishes in the background as she waited. Finally, I said I'd think about it, but only after talking to Lily. That evening, Lily was sprawled on her bed working on a science project. I sat down beside her and explained the invitation. "They want us there for Christmas Eve," I said, "but I told Grandma we'd decide together." She paused, holding her pencil above the page. "Will Aunt Rachel even want me there? I told her Grandma said everyone was welcome." She thought for a moment, then admitted she didn't want to miss Christmas with her grandparents. "And I miss Aunt Rachel," she added softly. We agreed on a plan we would go, but if either of us felt uncomfortable, we'd leave early. "We can have a backup plan," I suggested. "Catch a movie or stop for pie on the way home." Lily nodded, a small smile forming. "Okay, but can we practice what to say if someone's rude?" I promised we would. In the weeks before Christmas, my parents kept sending updates about the menu and seating arrangements. I could hear the undercurrent in my father's voice when he called a reminder to keep things peaceful. I decided if we were going, I wanted to bring something that mattered. Not something expensive or decorative, but something that would mean something to Rachel if she let it. After Lily went to bed, I began gathering old photos and mementos. There were snapshots from when Rachel was a toddler, drawings Lily had made for her over the years, and candid pictures from family vacations. I arranged them into a leather-bound album, leaving the last page for something that spoke without accusation, the wedding invitation mounted neatly with the words, "Family means no one gets left behind or forgotten," written underneath in careful script. When Lily and I went shopping for gifts, she asked what we should get Rachel and Mark. "Sometimes the best gifts can't be bought," I said. She raised an eyebrow but didn't ask more. We bought presents for my parents and aunts and wrapped them together at the kitchen table, the album among the stack. On Christmas Eve, the air was crisp but calm. We spent the morning baking gingerbread cookies using my grandmother's recipe, filling the house with cinnamon and molasses. Lily wore a green velvet dress with the gold necklace I'd given her for her birthday. "You look beautiful," I told her. "Remember, hold your head high. We belong there." We arrived at my parents' house right on time. The lights traced around the roofline glowed warmly against the snow, and the wreath on the door smelled faintly of pine when my mother hugged us in. Come in," she said brightly, glancing toward the living room. Rachel stood near the fireplace in a deep red dress, Mark beside her in a tailored suit. His parents were there too, talking with my father. Lily's hand tightened around mine as we approached. "Merry Christmas," I said, keeping my voice even. Mark's parents nodded politely. My father hugged us. Mark offered a brief Merry Christmas without much warmth. Rachel hesitated, then stepped forward for a quick hug. "Glad you could make it," she said before turning to Lily. "Hey, you've grown since I saw you last," Lily replied politely. "Merry Christmas." At dinner, we were seated at the opposite end of the long table from Rachel and Mark, with his parents placed near my mother and father. The conversation flowed around us, focusing on travel plans, business updates, and charity events. Halfway through the meal, Mark raised his glass. "We're excited to share some news," he announced. "We've joined the Hillcrest Country Club and put a deposit on a vacation home in Aspen." There were congratulations from around the table. He added, glancing in our direction, "The Aspen place will be for adult gatherings. The neighborhood just isn't set up for kids." I felt Lily shift beside me, but I covered her hand under the table. My mother beamed at Rachel, reminiscing about her childhood ski trips. Rachel started to say they might host Easter there for the family, but Mark quickly said it would depend on renovations. Lily stayed quiet for the rest of the meal, moving food around her plate. After dinner, everyone gathered in the living room for the gift exchange. My parents smiled warmly when they opened the digital photo frame Lily and I had prepared for them. When it was Rachel and Mark's turn, I handed her the album. "It's not much," I said quietly, "but I hope it means something to you." She unwrapped it slowly, her eyes settling on the title in gold lettering. As she turned the pages, the polite smile on her face gave way to something softer. She lingered on the pictures of us as children, of her holding Lily as a newborn, of cookie-baking afternoons and birthday celebrations. Interspersed were Lily's handmade cards and drawings. At the back, her gaze rested on the invitation and the words below it. The room had gone still. Mark's parents exchanged a glance. Mark shifted in his seat, glancing at his watch. Rachel traced the handwriting with her fingertips, then looked up. "Lily," she said gently, "come sit with me. There are pictures here I'd forgotten about." Lily glanced at me. I nodded. She crossed the room and settled beside her aunt, both of them leaning over the album. Rachel pointed to one picture of Lily in a ballet costume. "Remember this? You were so nervous, but you did perfectly." Lily smiled. "You brought me roses after, even though I messed up the spin." Rachel laughed softly. For a moment, the stiffness between them seemed to melt away. Mark cleared his throat. "It's getting late," he said. Rachel glanced at him, then back to the album. "Just a few more minutes," she replied. His jaw tightened, but he didn't say more. When the exchange was over and coats were being gathered, Rachel stepped toward me. "Can we talk later?" she asked quietly. I nodded. Lily was busy saying goodbye to my parents, clutching a small bag of cookies my mother had handed her. As we stepped out into the cold night air, I had the sense something had shifted just slightly, but enough to matter. Rachel called the next afternoon, asking if we could meet for coffee. We chose a small cafe halfway between our homes, a quiet place with worn leather booths and the smell of fresh bread drifting from the kitchen. When she arrived, she wasn't dressed in the polished style I'd grown used to seeing. Instead of the designer clothes and perfect hair, she wore jeans, a soft sweater, and almost no makeup. She looked more like the sister I remembered. "Thank you for coming," she said as we sat across from each other. "I've been thinking a lot since Christmas Eve." I told her I had too and asked what was on her mind. She rested her hands around the coffee cup, watching the steam curl upward. "It wasn't just the pictures," she said. "It was seeing Lily's face when I asked her to sit with me. I realized how much I've been missing." She hesitated before continuing. "After we left Mom and Dad's Mark and I had a fight. He said the album was emotional manipulation. He called it inappropriate to bring up the past that way." I kept my eyes on her, letting her speak, but I couldn't stop thinking about those photos she went on and about the way things used to be. I told him I was having lunch with Lily next week, whether he liked it or not. I asked how he took it. She gave a short laugh. "Not well. He said I needed to decide between my new life and my old one, and I told him I should never have been asked to choose." She glanced toward the window as if gathering her thoughts. "I'm staying at a hotel for now. I need space to think." We talked for nearly 2 hours. She admitted feeling increasingly isolated over the past year, cut off from old friends and constantly trying to meet the expectations of Mark's family. "I thought marrying him would make me feel secure," she said, "but I've never felt more unsure of who I am." Before we left, she told me she wanted to apologize to Lily directly, and to me as well. The following week, she kept her word. She took Lily to the small diner they used to visit on Saturdays. When Lily came home that afternoon, she was carrying a small shopping bag and smiling in a way I hadn't seen for months. Aunt Rachel said she made a huge mistake, Lily told me. She said she should have stood up for me about the wedding. "We're going shopping again next weekend, just like before." Over the next several weeks, I noticed small changes in Rachel. She still lived in the house with Mark, but spoke more openly about setting boundaries. She told him that Lily was her family and would be included in events from now on. At first, he resisted accusing her of backtracking on the image they'd built, but she held her ground. In early spring, my parents invited us all to dinner at their house. When we arrived, Rachel was already there with Mark. He greeted us politely, and though it was brief, it was without the stiffness I'd come to expect. Lily joined Rachel in the kitchen to help with dessert, their voices carrying down the hall with laughter over something that had happened at the store earlier that day. By Easter, Rachel had convinced Mark to host the family at their place in Aspen. When Lily and I arrived, she led us upstairs to show us the room she'd prepared. On the dresser were framed photos of the two of them from years past. Lily ran her fingers over one of the frames, smiling. "This is my room now," she said quietly. That first evening after dinner, I stepped out onto the balcony. The mountains rose in the distance, their peaks still holding patches of snow. Rachel joined me, wrapping her arms around herself against the chill. "Thank you," she said. I asked for what? For not giving up on me, for showing me what I was about to lose. We stood there for a while, watching the sky fade into deep blue. Inside, I could hear Lily and Mark's father playing a game of chess, the quiet murmur of conversation filling the house. For the first time in a long while, it felt like a start. A week after our trip to Aspen, Rachel called and asked if she and Lily could spend a Saturday together. She wanted to take her to the art museum and then stop by the small bookstore they used to visit when Lily was little. When they pulled up to our house that morning, I saw Rachel behind the wheel of her own car, not the luxury SUV Mark usually drove. Lily hopped in with a smile and a quick wave. They were gone for most of the day. When they came back, Rachel helped carry in a paper bag filled with books and a small wrapped box. "For you," she said to me, handing it over. Inside was a framed photo of the three of us from years ago, standing in the kitchen with flour on our cheeks, laughing over a baking disaster. "Thought it should be where you can see it," she said. That afternoon, after Rachel left, Lily told me about their day. They had walked slowly through the museum talking about the paintings, and Rachel had shared stories about her college art classes. At the bookstore, she let Lily choose a stack of novels, insisting on buying them all. Over lunch, Rachel had told her she was making some changes, keeping more of her own schedule, spending time with family, and setting limits with Mark's constant demands. The next time I saw Rachel was at Sunday dinner at my parents' house. She arrived alone, explaining that Mark was in Chicago for business. She brought Lily a set of watercolor paints, saying she remembered how much she'd loved them years ago. My mother seemed relieved at the easy conversation around the table, though I caught her glancing between us more than once. 2 weeks later, Rachel invited us to her house for an afternoon visit. When we arrived, she led us to a newly finished room upstairs. For when you visit, she told Lily, the space had a soft blue bedspread, a desk by the window, and framed photos of the two of them on the dresser. Lily walked around slowly, touching the corner of the desk and looking at the pictures. "It's perfect," she said quietly. While Lily explored, Rachel asked if we could talk privately in the kitchen. She told me she and Mark had started couples counseling. "It's not easy," she admitted. "He's used to making all the decisions. But I've told him that my family will be part of my life, and that's not changing." She said he'd been resistant at first, but was beginning to see that pushing everyone away wasn't helping their marriage. A month later, my parents hosted another family dinner this time, inviting Mark as well. He was polite, asking Lily about school and even complimenting her on a drawing my mother had framed in the hallway. It was a short exchange, but it mattered. Over dessert, Rachel suggested we plan another visit to Aspen in the summer, this time for a long weekend. In the weeks that followed, Lily and Rachel slipped back into familiar habits: Saturday outings, text messages about small things, and phone calls just to say hello. The change was slow but steady, each moment building on the last. One evening in late May, Rachel stopped by my house unexpectedly. She sat at the kitchen table, her hands wrapped around a mug of tea. "I know I can't erase what happened," she said, "but I want to keep moving in the right direction, for me and for Lily." She looked tired, but sure of herself the way she used to when she'd made up her mind about something important. As summer approached, the calendar began to fill with plans, family dinners, a weekend trip to the lake, and that return to Aspen. The distance that had once seemed impossible to cross was shrinking, replaced by a careful, steady rebuilding. And while I knew there was still more to work through, I could see the path forming. By the time summer arrived, our plans for the long weekend in Aspen were set. Rachel called a few days before to confirm details, her voice sounding lighter than it had in a long while. "Lily's room is ready," she said. "I found a quilt I think she'll love." We drove up on a Friday afternoon, the highway winding into the mountains with tall pines on either side. When we arrived, Rachel met us at the door, pulling Lily into a hug before leading us upstairs. The room was exactly as she'd described: soft blue walls, the new quilt folded neatly at the foot of the bed, and a small vase of daisies on the desk. Lily ran her hand over the quilt, smiling. "It's perfect," she said. That first evening we had dinner out on the deck. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of pine, and the mountains in the distance still held streaks of snow. Mark joined us after a work call, greeting us politely before sitting down. He asked Lily about her summer plans, listening, as she told him about an art camp she was considering. "Sounds like a good way to spend the break," he said, his tone even. The next morning, Rachel suggested we all go into town for the farmers market. The streets were lined with stalls selling fresh produce, handmade crafts, and baked goods. Lily found a booth selling watercolor prints and chose one of a mountain lake to hang in her room at home. Rachel bought a basket of cherries, handing them out as we walked. That afternoon, while Lily and Mark's father played chess in the living room, Rachel asked if I'd join her on the balcony. We stood together, looking out at the view. "It's different this time," she said quietly. "Mark's been making an effort. He's not where I want him to be yet, but he's trying." She told me counseling was ongoing and that she'd been clear about keeping her family close. "It's not negotiable anymore," she said. On Sunday, Rachel arranged for us to take a short hike on a nearby trail. Lily walked ahead with Mark, pointing out wildflowers along the path. From where I was, I could hear her explaining how she'd learned their names from a book Rachel had given her years ago. Mark nodded, asking questions, and for the first time, I saw a hint of genuine connection between them. That evening, Rachel cooked dinner roast chicken with vegetables, and we ate at the kitchen table instead of outside. The conversation was easy, moving from Lily's school projects to my parents' plans for the fall. Mark offered to make coffee afterward, and though it was a small gesture, it stood out. On Monday morning, before we left, Rachel pulled me aside while Lily was saying goodbye to Mark's parents. "I know it's not perfect yet," she said, "but I feel like we're moving in the right direction. I'm not going back to how things were." Her voice was steady, her expression sure. The drive home was quiet, both of us tired from the weekend. Lily leaned against the window, holding the watercolor print in her lap. "It was a good trip," she said softly. I nodded, knowing she meant more than just the scenery. By late summer, the rhythm between all of us felt noticeably different. Rachel and Lily spoke or texted almost every day, their conversations now filled with small details of daily life. When Rachel called me one Wednesday evening, she asked if we could have everyone over for dinner at my house, Mark included. That Saturday, I set the table for 6, adding fresh flowers in the center. When Rachel and Mark arrived, they came in together, both carrying grocery bags. We brought dessert, Rachel said, placing a pie on the counter. Mark handed me a bottle of wine. "Thought this might go well with dinner," he added. Lily joined Rachel in the kitchen while I finished the roast chicken. From the dining room, I could hear their laughter mixing with the sound of Rachel showing her how to whip cream for the pie. Mark sat at the table with my father talking about a fishing trip they were planning in the fall. It was the first time in a long while that the room didn't feel split down the middle. Over dinner, the conversation moved easily from travel plans to favorite books. Mark asked Lily if she had finished the watercolor she'd started in Aspen. She told him she had, and that it was framed in her room. "You'll have to show me next time we visit," he said with a small smile. After the dishes were cleared, Rachel and I stepped out to the porch. The sun was dipping low, casting a warm glow over the yard. "It's not perfect," she said, "but I think we're finding a balance. He's beginning to see how important this is to me." I could hear the relief in her voice, the tension that used to be there softening. Inside, Lily and Mark were setting out plates for dessert. He poured coffee while she carefully sliced the pie. It was a simple scene, but one that would have felt impossible months ago. As the evening wound down, Rachel hugged me tightly at the door. "Thank you for giving me the space to figure this out," she said quietly. I nodded, knowing there was still ground to cover, but feeling the weight between us growing lighter. The next morning, Lily sat at the kitchen table, sketching in her notebook. "Last night felt good," she said without looking up. "Like we're actually a family again." I agreed, though I knew there was still one more test ahead, the upcoming Thanksgiving, when the entire extended family would be together under one roof. Thanksgiving came with the scent of roasted turkey and the sound of laughter spilling from the living room. I stood in the kitchen carving the bird while Lily arranged the side dishes. Rachel and Mark arrived together, coats in hand, cheeks pink from the cold. Within minutes, the house filled with relatives. My father took his seat at the head of the table, and Rachel slipped into the chair beside him. Mark sat next to Lily, helping her pass the bread basket down the line. Conversation swirled easily, and there was no trace of the tension that had once settled over every gathering. When it came time for the toast, my father cleared his throat. "This year," he said, "I'm thankful for second chances and for the people who take them." His eyes landed on Rachel, then shifted to me. For a moment, no one spoke, and then the clinking of glasses filled the silence. After dinner, Rachel and I found ourselves alone in the kitchen, rinsing plates side by side. She dried her hands and turned to me. "I know it hasn't been easy, but I want you to know I see the effort you've made. And I'm trying too." I nodded, feeling the weight of the past months ease just a little more. "We'll keep trying," I said. "That's what matters." Later, when the dishes were done and the guests had gone, I stood in the quiet dining room. The table was bare now, but I could still see the faces around it. Lily's bright smile, Rachel's softening eyes, Mark leaning in to listen. It wasn't perfect. It probably never would be. But the distance that once felt like a wall between us had become something more like a bridge. One we were all willing to walk. If this season has taught me anything, it's that family is rarely a smooth road. Sometimes you have to meet in the middle. Sometimes you have to start over entirely. And sometimes just showing up again and again is the real work of love. Thank you for listening to my story. If it brought a thought or a memory to mind, I hope you'll share it with someone you care about. After all, the smallest conversations can change the course of a life.